Good day, everyone. Welcome to the University Social Responsibility Summit. And our specific session for today is focused on education to cultivate social responsibility. We have two topic presentations. Before we hear from our speakers, for our audience who are here with us, if you have questions to our presenters, kindly put it in the question box to be found at the right side of the web platform. And if you want to further ask questions to our speakers, kindly go to the Meet the Delegate section in the USR web platform and schedule a meeting in one of our networking lounges. Okay. So with no further ado, let us hear from our first presenter. And the topic and title of the presentation is the implementation of Sustainable Development Goal 4 in higher education institutions in India through its National Education Policy 2020. Our speaker is from Ramaiah University of Applied Sciences in India. Let us all welcome Ranjini Nadig.
Thank you so much. I hope I'm audible, and you can also see my PPT and other things. All right, so I understand that we all are familiar with sustainable development goals, but I chose the Sustainable Development 4, which was related to quality education. And with this presentation, I'm just trying to take you through how we as a country, India, is trying to achieve its targets related to Sustainable Development Goal 4 with respect to its higher education institutions by implementing its National Education Policy 2020. Before we start, before I go to my next slide, I just wanted to let you know that in India, we believe that these goals are something that are global objectives in its targets and other things. But when we are implementing these goals or these objectives and we are working towards it, we tend to have a localized approach. So it's more of a global objective with the local solutions, which also is what sustainability talks about. So with that in mind, NEP 2020, which is our national education policy, tries to strengthen the local knowledge system and also the local availability and accessibility of education to its citizens of the country. And when it comes to implementation also of the particular policy, it is right for us to understand that it's a national policy, but they take into consideration the states as well as the local governments for its implementation. So moving on. So the convergence of SDG 4 and NEP 2020. So these are the three things, these are the 3 points where I have broken down the objectives of SDG 4 broadly, which is towards inclusive education, towards equitable and quality education, and lifelong learning opportunities. When we start with the first one, which is the inclusive education, how is NEP trying to move towards it is, one of its very objective is expansion, wherein we are looking at how can we reach to every individual to have access to good and quality education. When it comes to higher education institutions and higher education accessibility in the country, currently our gross enrollment ratio is about 27%, which says that about for every 100 undergraduate students, only a few of them come to the higher education institutions, which is something that we have to be catering towards, for which we have an inclusive education plan wherein we are making education be accessible, quality higher education be accessible through this policy, wherein students can also enroll and there is a restructuring that is happening with the higher education structure per se. Such. The second one, which is equitable and quality education, we are looking also at equity as one of our objectives in our education policy, wherein we are trying to understand the socio-economic differences with a lot, which comes with our culture and our and the country's diversity given at this point of time. So there has to be an equitable approach and an equitable institution wherein equity is maintained throughout, and the quality of education and the delivery of this is happening, is what we want to believe in. And lifelong learning opportunities all the way from school education until the higher education and further, that is something that the national education policy talks about. But when we are talking about higher education institutions in particular, this lifelong learning opportunities is something that is even with respect to vocational education and skill development, wherein people who are willing to do more than just having a degree and other things is being catered to through different policies and also different institutions, wherein their lifelong learning experience and also skill-based education is being addressed with. So with these 3 points here, I would like to say that NEP looks at 3 E's, one which is equity, expansion, and excellence. Excellence is also something that we are looking at through lifelong learning opportunities. Further, when we are having SDG 4 in higher education institution, this is where I'm working also on as of now through my dissertation and other things, wherein we are looking at successful implementation of SDGs with quality education like we previously spoke about. And while we are giving quality education, we are also looking towards meeting demands which are global, national, and regional requirements. There needs to be a kind of a inclusive thinking, and also a brotherhood which is being catered or which is being developed in every. You're able to hear me, right? Because I don't know if my internet's a little unstable.
Yes, we hear you, Ranjini.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much. All right. Yeah. So the kind of brotherhood that needs to be created amongst the fellow citizens is something that we are looking towards, for which we have creation of global citizens, wherein we have an education framework for promoting global citizenry in our higher education institutions, through which we are looking at how can the students be equipped towards a sustainable and how can we be equipped towards a sustainable future? How can we be equipped to make our students understand sustainability and sustainable development, and also about how can we create a knowledgeable society? As much as we understand that we are moving towards a knowledge economy, we also need to cater on knowledge society. And when we are creating that, no better place than an institution and an education institution is where we have to be starting that with. So keeping that in mind, we have this particular framework wherein we are catering to the global targets and global standards and requirements with respect to their research, their pedagogy, and their teaching methods, and also having it with localized approaches. And we are trying to align both of them and bring out global citizens through this particular framework. And the next one, which looks at bringing in this social responsibility and also a sense of development and outreach, as also is through internationalization of higher education. With NEP 2020 being implemented in India, in my state, Karnataka itself, we have over 20 different countries which have come in for higher education institutions to have a tie-up with their knowledge exchange programs and student exchange programs, and also giving an opportunity for online learning and also for other courses which can be taken sitting right here in India, and they are offering it from the different countries or their home countries. So such kind of initiatives are being done because of the convergence between SDG 4s and NEP 2020, which will be facilitating the students of India who want to be global citizens and who also want to have this, who wants to move towards sustainable development and also look at world as one entity and not just as one particular country or just the citizens of one particular country. And like I mentioned, there has been a shift, a considerable shift with our pedagogy, our teaching methods, and our research methodologies, and all of that to achieve the standards that are being required by different organizations and all of them. That being said, I am open for questions. So, any questions that are there, we could be taking that.
All right, thank you for that, Ranjini, for the presentation. Again, to our audience, if you have questions, you could put it in our chat box to be found on the right side of our web platform. Just click on the question bubble there, and you could type in your question for our speaker. So again, the presentation is all about trying to understand the national education policy of India in 2020 in terms of implementing SDG 4, which is focused on quality education.
Yeah.
Okay, so for the first question, Ranjini, so in your review of the policy of India and how it is being implemented in the higher education institutions, specifically in SDG 4, are you able to see any form of irregularities or inconsistencies in implementation?
All right. One of the challenge of implementation here is that it is not it's not consistent throughout the country, and it is also institution specific and also region specific. Like I said, my state Karnataka is able to be implementing internationalization of higher education because of the universities which are already existing here. And while there is another state which may not be having the potential, or the universities will have the same potential as that in my state, so accessibility for those students in that particular state is seen as a problem. There is that implementation challenge, but however, the online mode of education which we have seen a transition in addresses that particular issue. And also, when we are talking about implementation, there are 4 stages of implementation of NEP 2020. One will be in the central level, the other one which will be taken by the central government, and the next one will be by the state governments, and then will be institutions, because institution will have an autonomy to have engagements with different universities abroad and other places, or even within the country and even within the state. And then there will be individuals who are willing to have collaborations with different institutions. It could be the teachers, it could be the professors who are visiting faculty or adjunct faculty who are willing to do willing to give our knowledge or even learn from them. That's how the implementation is working. Yes, there is that particular challenge of change in regions.
Thank you for clarifying that, Ranjini. The other question is, what could be the source of the inconsistencies in implementation across the country? Now, what are the factors involved?
Oh, okay. Like I mentioned, the other factors which are involved could have been the political factors, which are majorly what it plays, because the central government and the state government, both of their political will towards be doing that. We have we have this one particular definition by Thomas Dye, wherein he says, he's a political science thinker. He says a public policy is something that the governments choose to do and not to do. So when we are looking at this implementation, we need to understand that education in our country comes under a concurrent list, wherein both center and the state have a hand in that. They have a say in it. So it becomes a challenge, because if the state chooses not to do it, then the entire policy might be a problem for its implementation, can see a hurdle while implementing it. But however, there is a lot of competition in implementation of this particular policy amongst the states, which makes which makes way for the states to somehow get there. And also the evaluation and the regulatory mechanism which is there in the country would ask and demand the states in a different way. They are not coercive, but they are competitive in nature for implementation of public policy, especially in particular to NEP 2020.
Okay, all right. The last question would be part of quality education is gender equality. How is it in India? Are there gender equality in terms of quality education?
All right. Like I mentioned, our GER at the moment is 27%. And we are facing gender inequality, and it's not that equal in our higher education landscape as of now. But however, there are certain mechanisms which are there in the current policy that facilitates for this particular gender to be addressed. For example, we have something called as multiple entry and exit programs, wherein we understand that women are sometimes moving from one state to another state because of marriage and other things, which is how it works here in India. So to facilitate for people like them who are into early marriage and other things, there are different schemes and different frameworks which have been brought into light by NEP 2020 to address gender in particular. Apart from that, states also have different programs to bring in women into education sector, and also the evaluation authority will make sure that there will be gender equality in every class. And when we are talking about gender, we understand that it's just not binary. It's also the other gender which is involved. So the other gender is also taken into consideration, and we have different programs. NEP 2020 is in convergence with another marginalized program, which is called a SMILE here in India, where we have scholarships and also scholarships for transgender people for applying for education, not just in India, even outside. So that is how we are trying to maintain equity, in particular to gender. I would also like to mention that when we look at the entire NEP 2020 document, there is nothing like this is specific for women, because we are looking for gender neutrality throughout in the document. There will be nothing like only for women and or only for transgenders in this. However, the schemes that will be supporting that is what we are looking at. That's about gender.
Thank you for that clarification. All right, now that ends our Q&A portion with Ranjini. If you still have further questions to Ranjini, kindly look her up at our Meet the Delegates in the USR Summit. You could message her and conduct a virtual meeting in one of our networking lounges, or you could continue the conversation by connecting with her. Okay, thank you very much for that, Ranjini.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, so at this juncture, because our second presentation is experiencing technical problems, so we end our session for today. And I hope everyone would still be able to participate in the other available sessions in our USR Summit. Thank you once again for being with us, and take care.